I bow to the divine teacher within.
Ready to dive into a connection that's way more powerful than we usually give it credit for?
I'm in. Let's do it.
We're talking about the link between our minds and bodies, specifically how that connection plays out in the state of American health today. You know we're all about going deep here, and the research you sent over on stress, well, it's pretty fascinating stuff. Did you know that something we often blow off as, like, just in our heads is actually messing with our physical health at the cellular level?
Yeah, and what's really interesting now is that we're moving past those kind of vague ideas that, like, stress is bad for you. We're figuring out the specific ways chronic stress can actually mess with our metabolism.
It's wild, right? And this isn't just about feeling a little, frazzled. Dr. Casey Means, in her book, Good Energy, she really gets into this whole mind-body connection. And get this, she says a whopping 75 to 90% of diseases are directly linked to how our bodies react to stress.
That is a huge chunk of diseases. It really highlights how important it is to understand exactly how stress hits us physically. Like, picture this. When we're constantly dealing with fear or anxiety, it sets off this chain reaction in our bodies. Dr. Means talks about chronic inflammation being a huge part of this.
Okay, so walk me through that. What's actually happening in our bodies when we're stressed out? Paint me a picture.
Okay, imagine your immune system is basically stuck on high alert 24/7.
Oh, that sounds exhausting.
It is. So stress triggers our bodies to release these inflammatory chemicals called cytokines. Now, in small doses, cytokines, they're not bad. Actually, they're super important for a healthy immune response.
Okay, so they're like our first line of defense.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the problem is when we're chronically stressed, it's like our bodies are drowning in these inflammatory messengers. It's nonstop.
So instead of just handling like small fires here and there, our immune system is stuck battling this huge inferno all the time.
The perfect way to put it. And all that inflammation, it takes a serious toll. There's this study Dr. Means mentions. Researchers put these mice under stress for just 6 hours.
Just 6 hours. I know people who think that's a relaxed work day. Makes you wonder what's going on inside our bodies after a crazy day, huh?
Right. Anyway, 6 hours. Might not sound like a lot to us, but for these little mice, it was enough to send their immune systems into total overdrive, just flooding their bodies with these inflammatory cytokines.
Wow. So what does that even mean for us?
Well, the effects go way beyond just feeling achy or run down. Over time, this constant inflammation can actually mess with how our cells work, especially when it comes to insulin, which, as you know, is key for keeping our blood sugar in check. And when things go sideways there...
Let me guess. That can turn into insulin resistance?
Bingo. And insulin resistance is a major driver of metabolic dysfunction, which, as we all know by now, is like public enemy #1 for chronic diseases like type 2 diabetes.
So bottom line, we're talking about way more than just feeling a little on edge. This is about our bodies literally breaking down because of stress.
You got it. And the wear and tear, it doesn't stop there. Chronic stress also cranks up this thing called oxidative stress. Think of it like rust, but like rusting from the inside out.
Okay, rusting from the inside out definitely got my attention. What's happening there? What is that exactly?
So our cells are under constant attack by these molecules called free radicals. You can think of them like these little tiny wrecking balls that smash into our DNA and other important cell structures.
Yikes. Do we just have to sit there and take it?
Well, luckily our bodies are amazing. In normal circumstances, we produce antioxidants. Antioxidants are like our own personal cleanup crew. They neutralize free radicals keep them from doing too much damage.
So antioxidants are like our own personal bodyguards, protecting our cells from harm. I like it.
Exactly. But here's the kicker. Chronic stress weakens those defenses, so those little free radical wrecking balls can just run wild.
Uh-oh. I'm not liking the sound of this. What happens then?
You know, there's actually research on this. One study looked at medical students, and if anyone's under stress, it's med students, right?
Right.
Anyway, researchers found that the students' antioxidant levels totally tanked right before big exams, while markers of oxidative damage shot way up. It was like their bodies were under attack.
That's intense. But I guess once the exams are over, things go back to normal.
Not so fast. I wish it were that easy.
Oh.
But the damage doesn't just vanish, especially if stress is a constant. Over time, it builds up and contributes to all kinds of problems. Everything from making us age faster to increasing our risk for those chronic diseases we keep talking about.
Okay, so we've got inflammation going haywire, oxidative stress doing damage. Anything else chronic stress is doing to us on a cellular level.
Yeah, oh yeah. It also seems to be messing with our mitochondria.
Our words. What now? Okay, now you're just using big words to make me feel like I fell asleep in biology class.
Uh-huh. No worries. I'll keep it simple. Mitochondria are basically tiny little power plants inside our cells. They're what take the food we eat and turn it into energy we can use.
Ah, okay. So they're like our own personal energy factories. And stress is messing with them.
You got it. Think of it like this. Stress drains our batteries. Most of the research on this has been done in animals, but the findings are still really interesting. Chronic stress makes our mitochondria less efficient, so they're not as good at producing energy, which can leave us feeling tired and, well, kind of blah. And there's even evidence that stress can actually damage the structure of our mitochondria over time.
No kidding. So it's like our energy factories are literally breaking down.
Pretty much. And that's not all. There's another piece to this puzzle, and it has to do with our blood sugar levels.
Really? I had no idea stress was connected to blood sugar.
Oh, it's definitely connected.
Yeah.
So when we're stressed, our bodies release a bunch of hormones like cortisol and adrenaline, that fight or flight response.
Yeah, like when you see a spider and freak out.
Exactly. Except now, instead of running from a spider, we're stressed about work deadlines, traffic, our crazy families, all the fun stuff.
Tell me about it, but isn't that what those hormones are for?
It is. Or it was back when our biggest problems were saber-toothed tigers and, not starving to death.
Yeah.
These days, our bodies haven't quite figured out that a stressful email isn't actually a life or death situation.
Yeah, I'd gladly take on a saber-toothed tiger with a strongly worded email. So what happens? What do those hormones actually do?
Well, one of the things they do is tell our liver to dump stored glucose, sugar, into our bloodstream. Again, back in the caveman days, this was helpful. Gave us a quick burst of energy to run away from danger.
Right. I'm seeing where you're going with this. That constant flood of sugar can't be good for us long term.
Nope, not good at all. Over time, it leads to insulin resistance. Our cells are basically like, dude, we get it. We need more energy.
Yeah.
They get kind of numb to insulin signals. And as we talked about earlier, when we have insulin resistance,
things get messy. Our whole metabolic system goes out of whack.
Exactly. It's amazing how interconnected everything is, right?
It really is. So even if we think we're handling stress just fine, our bodies might be telling a different story.
100%. It's not just impacting our mood. It's actually driving the very diseases that we're most afraid of. And get this. It's not just about individual stress levels. There's this bigger picture here, this kind of metabolic meltdown happening on a larger scale.
Okay, now you've really got me curious. A metabolic meltdown. I need to hear more about this. Okay, so before we went down that whole stress rabbit hole, you used this kind of scary term, metabolic meltdown. What does that even mean? And how does it connect to everything we're talking about?
Well, you know how we were just talking about how chronic stress can really mess up our metabolism? Now picture that, but like on a massive scale. Across the country, we're seeing this crazy increase in conditions like obesity, type 2 diabetes, Alzheimer's, even things like infertility and certain types of cancer are on the rise. And the thing is, these aren't just random health problems. They're all connected. And a lot of it goes back to how our bodies are or aren't processing energy.
You're really painting a pretty bleak picture here. You mentioned this audio clip, metabolic dysfunction.mp3. It's actually kind of terrifying hearing those statistics.
I know, right? It really makes you stop and think. For example, back in the 1950s, only about 1% of Americans had type 2 diabetes. Today, it's like 50% of us are walking around with either type 2 or prediabetes.
50%? Are you serious? That's insane. Okay, but back up for a sec. What exactly is metabolic dysfunction? Is it just a fancy way of saying our metabolism is broken?
It's more than just being broken. It's this total system failure in how our cells are converting food into energy. Imagine your metabolism is like a car engine. When it's humming along, we feel good, our bodies are working the way they should, and we're able to, stay at a healthy weight. But when that engine starts to sputter...
Which, based on what we just talked about with stress, sounds like it's happening to a lot of us.
Yeah, it's kind of a big deal. And when that engine sputters, it's not just one thing that goes wrong. You start to see this buildup of toxins, problems regulating blood sugar, inflammation everywhere. It becomes this domino effect of dysfunction, and it can show up as all sorts of chronic diseases.
So it's not just about treating each disease as it pops up. It's about this underlying metabolic dysfunction that's causing a lot of these health problems in the first place.
Exactly. And it's why we can't just keep slapping on Band-Aid solutions. We have to look at what's causing the problem. We have to address the root causes of this metabolic meltdown.
Okay, so if metabolic dysfunction is public enemy number one, what's causing it? Like, is it in our genes? Is it just bad luck? What's the deal?
Our genes definitely play a role, but they're not the whole story. Dr. Means, both in her Senate testimony and her newsletters, she talks about these key culprits that are seriously messing with our metabolic health. Things like ultra-processed foods, all the pesticides in our food system,
Glass.
plastics. Even being sedentary and not getting enough sleep can really throw things out of whack.
Okay, that's a lot to unpack. Let's start with ultra-processed foods. We all know they're not great for us. But what's the connection to metabolic dysfunction? How does that work?
Ultra-processed foods are basically engineered to be addictive. We're talking sugar, unhealthy fats, artificial flavors, a whole bunch of additives. It's like they hijack our brains to crave more and more.
So they're designed to keep us hooked.
Pretty much. And because they're so low in nutritional value, we're left feeling unsatisfied. So we just want more, which keeps us stuck in this cycle of unhealthy eating.
Yeah.
And it's not even just about weight gain either. There's actually been studies that show a link between eating a lot of this ultra-processed stuff and having a higher risk of, well, dying.
Okay, that's kind of scary. What about things like pesticides? I try to buy organic whenever I can, but I'm not gonna lie, it's not always easy, especially with how expensive groceries are.
I hear you. And you're right to be mindful of pesticides. The problem is these chemicals, they're designed to protect crops, but they end up in our food and then, well, in us. And we're not just talking tiny amounts here. Dr. Mean says something like over 1 billion pounds of pesticides are sprayed in the U.S. every year.
1 billion? You've got to be kidding me. That's just like, wow. So all those pesticides end up in our system. What are they actually doing to us?
That's the million-dollar question,
Yes.
right? And researchers are still trying to figure it all out. But they are finding links between pesticides and a bunch of health problems, including messing with our hormones, causing neurodevelopmental issues, especially in kids, and even increasing the risk of certain types of cancer.
We tend to forget our bodies are these crazy, complex systems. Throwing all these chemicals in there is going to throw something off. And it seems like those effects impact everything from our metabolism to our reproductive health.
It's kind of terrifying when you think about it.
Yeah.
Okay, shifting gears a bit here. What about plastics? I know they're terrible for the environment, but how are they affecting us?
That's a great question, and to be honest, scientists are still trying to figure out the full impact. But there's one finding that Dr. Means talks about that's super unsettling. Microplastics, which are these teeny tiny particles that break off of larger plastic, have actually been found in human organs, like even in our brains. Our brains? No way! How's that even possible?
Scientists think we're eating and drinking them, and they're so small that we can breathe them in too. Remember how we talked about billions of pounds of plastic being produced every year? Yeah, well, it doesn't just magically disappear. It breaks down into smaller and smaller pieces, gets everywhere, and a lot of it ends up inside of us.
And that's what's so scary. We can't just, hit the undo button on that.
Exactly. These microplastics can hang out in our environment and our bodies for years, and we're just starting to learn about their long-term effects. But some research suggests they could be contributing to inflammation, messing with their hormones, there's that word again, and potentially even causing developmental problems.
It's a good reminder that we're not separate from nature. What we do to our environment, we do to ourselves. Okay, let's talk about the next culprit on our list. Sedentary lifestyles. I know, I should move more. We all should. But seriously, how is sitting around all day messing with our metabolic health?
Well, for starters, we were literally designed to move. Our bodies are meant to be active. And it's about way more than just burning calories. Moving our bodies actually triggers all these amazing processes at the cellular level. For example, it helps our bodies use insulin better, which, as you know, is crucial for regulating blood sugar. And it even gives our mitochondria a boost.
Right, those little energy factories we were talking about.
Those are the ones. When we're inactive, those energy factories get sluggish, and our whole metabolism slows down. Dr. Means compares the average American's daily step count, a measly 3,500 steps, with the 7,000 that's recommended to actually help reduce the risk of chronic disease.
So just getting off the couch and moving around can actually help our bodies on a fundamental level. Who knew?
It's true. It's not just about vanity, fitting into our genes. It's about keeping our cells healthy and functioning properly.
It's like we have to reframe how we think about exercise. It's not a chore. It's an investment in our health.
100%. Okay, and last but not least, we have to talk about sleep deprivation. And before you say anything, I know I'm guilty of it too, always burning the midnight oil. But help me understand, how does being sleep deprived tie into this whole metabolic dysfunction thing?
Sleep is crucial. I mean, it's when our bodies do all their most important repair work. When we're sleeping, our cells get to clean up the mess from the day, repair any damage, and just hit the reset button on our hormones.
So when we're skimping on sleep, we're basically robbing our bodies of the time they need to do their job properly.
Exactly. And over time, that can have a huge impact on our metabolic health. Studies are showing that even a few nights of bad sleep can mess with how well our bodies respond to insulin, making us more vulnerable to those blood sugar spikes we were talking about earlier. And if you're chronically sleep deprived, you're looking at an increased risk of weight gain, type 2 diabetes, heart disease. The list goes on and on. Okay, I knew pulling all-nighters wasn't doing me any favors, but I had no idea it was impacting my body on such a deep level. It's really eye-opening to see how all these things are connected.
It really is. It all goes back to that mind-body connection. Something as simple as a lifestyle choice can have these huge ripple effects. What we might think is totally isolated can impact our entire system.
I'll be honest, it feels a little overwhelming. It's like everywhere we turn, there's another thing trying to sabotage our health. What are we supposed to do? Is there any hope?
You know, Dr. Means is actually a really positive person. She believes that we have the power to take control of our health. She talks about making a return to nature and ourselves.
Okay, that sounds promising, but what does that actually look like? Give me the game plan. So it's kind of like with those microplastics, right? We tend to think of health as the separate thing from the environment, but they're totally intertwined.
Totally. And it goes back to what Dr. Means calls heart wisdom. Like, we can't just think our way out of this mess. We have to start listening to our bodies again.
So it's like our bodies are always trying to talk to us, but we're just not listening.
Exactly. Think about it. That sluggish feeling you get after a huge fast food meal. That's your body trying to tell you something. Or how about that burst of energy after a walk outside? Body saying thank you. We have to learn to pay attention to those signals again.
That makes sense. It's about tapping into that gut feeling, that intuition that we've kind of lost touch with.
Right. It's about getting back to those basic things that really nourish us on a fundamental level. And we're not just talking about adding years to our lifespan here. It's about adding life to those years. It's about feeling energized and actually alive, not just going through the motions.
It's about really living, taking control of our health and well-being, both individually and as a society.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And, Dr. Means really drives home this point, that we have way more power than we realize. We can make conscious choices, listen to our bodies, and demand better from the systems that impact our health. We can create a future where chronic disease isn't the norm, it's the exception.
Now that's a vision worth fighting for. Well, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive. And what a journey it's been. We've covered so much ground, from these tiny little cells to, the entire food system.
We really have. But, like any good deep dive, we're left with more questions than answers, more to think about, more to explore.
And that's what makes it so interesting. This isn't about giving you all the answers. It's about getting curious, thinking critically, and feeling empowered to take charge of your own health journey.
Exactly. Knowledge is power. The more we understand about how our amazing bodies work, the better choices we can make to support our health and well-being. So keep asking questions, keep learning, and most importantly, keep listening to your body.
Could not agree more. Thank you so much for geeking out on this stuff with me. It's been a blast. And for those of you listening at home, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep those incredible sources coming. And until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.
Guiding me on my spiritual journey spin. Wisdom and love, my heart does win. Inner guidance, my soul's kin.
Ever get this, kind of creepy sense that things are off? Like something's shifting, with the elections coming up and everything. It's almost like a societal restlessness.
Yeah, definitely. There's that feeling of potential upheaval in the air, and I don't think it's just about politics. Feels deeper, like we're at some kind of turning point.
Exactly. And that feeling is what got me thinking about this deep dive. We're going to be looking at the notes of this guy, William Vincent Carleton, who was really wrestling with this sense that something was off, like we're missing something about reality.
Okay, interesting. What did he look to for answers?
Well, he starts with this ancient proverb, "As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he." But then he goes in a totally different direction.
Really? What, like ancient aliens or something?
Not quite. He connects that proverb to quantum physics.
Whoa! Talk about a leap. How does he even make that connection?
Well, he's exploring this idea that our thoughts, our feelings, all that internal stuff might actually have a bigger impact on the outside world than we realize. And he found some support for this idea in, believe it or not, quantum physics.
Okay, now you've got me really curious. So we're talking about actual science, not just new agey stuff.
Oh, this is legit science.
Yeah.
He was looking into the work of these big-time physicists, researchers who are exploring the link between consciousness and, well, the fabric of reality.
You're not talking about some fringe theorists, are you?
Nope, these are the real deal. They've written books, given TED Talks, all that. Like, take Dr. Quantum, for instance.
Wait, you mean Fred Allen Wolf?
That's the one. I love calling him Dr. Quantum, though. So anyway, he's this theoretical physicist, right? And he's dug deep into the quantum physics of consciousness.
Yeah, his work really makes you think twice about how much of a role we play as observers in shaping what we call reality.
Totally. And then there's Amit Goswami.
Oh, I've heard of him. He's the one who talks about quantum activism, right?
That's him. He's all about using these quantum principles to understand things like, well, economics, for one, even social change.
It's fascinating how he takes these abstract theories and tries to apply them to real-world problems, like not just trying to understand reality, but change it.
Right. Then there's Dana Zohar. She's done some seriously mind-bending work on what she calls the quantum self.
So, like, the idea that our very identities are kind of woven into the quantum world.
That's it. Instead of seeing ourselves as these separate, solid beings, we're starting to understand ourselves as more fluid, more interconnected, kind of like those subatomic particles.
Wow. And who else did Carleton look into?
Well, we can't forget Stuart Hameroff and his work on the Orchora theory.
Now that one is a real head-scratcher. I mean, trying to explain consciousness at the level of quantum processes in the brain, it's almost like
Science fiction.
Yeah. Okay, so that's quantum physics and consciousness. Anything else?
Oh, yeah. And then there's Bruce Lipton. He's a cellular biologist who brings it all down to the level of our cells. He argues that our beliefs can actually impact our biology.
Okay, now that's interesting, because we usually think about science and spirituality as totally separate things, right? But it seems like Carleton is trying to bridge that gap using the work of all these researchers.
That's exactly it. And that's what we'll be digging into. How these old ideas about the power of thought might connect with what we're learning about the universe from modern science. What does it all mean? Well, buckle up, because we're about to find out. Okay, so we're talking about the power of thought, ancient wisdom, quantum physics. It's a lot, even for a deep dive. How do we even begin to connect those dots?
Well, Carleton uses a few key principles from quantum physics to kind of build his case. They might seem a little complex at first, but stick with me because this stuff has some really wild implications about, the nature of reality and our place in it.
All right, you've piqued my interest, but I'll be honest, quantum physics isn't exactly my forte. Think you can give us a crash course? Keep it approachable.
Absolutely. Let's start with something called the observer effect. It's this idea that the very act of observing something, especially at the subatomic level, can actually influence its behavior.
Okay, I've heard about this, but how? How can just looking at something change it?
That's the million-dollar question. And it's what makes quantum physics so fascinating, right? It challenges everything we thought we knew about how reality works. It's like those tiny particles, they're almost aware that they're being watched.
So if we bring that back to Carleton, he's suggesting that our thoughts, our intentions, our awareness, it's all a form of observation, and that this can impact the world around us.
Exactly. What if our inner world, our thoughts and feelings, aren't separate from the outer world at all? What if they're intertwined in ways we're just beginning to grasp?
That's a pretty profound thought. But before we go too far down that rabbit hole, what are some of the other principles Carleton uses?
Well, he talks about entanglement, which is got to be one of the most mind-boggling things in quantum physics. Picture this. Two particles linked in such a way that if you change one, the other changes instantly, no matter how far apart they are.
Wait, seriously, even if they're on opposite sides of the universe?
Even then, it's like they have this invisible connection that transcends space and time. It'd be like, I don't know, flipping two coins at the same time, and no matter how far apart you took them, one always landed on heads and the other on tails.
That's wild. So how does that relate to Carleton's point about everything being connected?
Well, if those tiny particles can be connected over such vast distances, it makes you wonder about our own connections, right? To each other, to the world around us. What if we're all part of this grand quantum web, all entangled?
Okay, I think I'm starting to get it. It's like this idea we have of being separate, it's just an illusion.
Precisely. And this leads us to the third principle Carleton talks about, quantum superposition. This one's a real head-scratcher, but also super important for understanding the power of our minds.
Okay, hit me with it. What's superposition?
Imagine a single particle, right? But instead of being in one state, it's in multiple states at the same time. And it's not that we just don't know which state it's in, it's that it's actually in all possible states simultaneously, until it's observed.
So it's like before you make a decision, you're holding both possibilities in your mind. And then choosing one collapses all those possibilities into the reality you experience.
That's a great way to put it. And here's where things get really interesting. Carleton suggests that our consciousness, our minds, might have this capacity for superposition too.
Hold on. So you're saying that we're capable of holding multiple realities within us. And our thoughts, beliefs, choices, they determine which one we end up experiencing.
Exactly. He's saying we're not just passive bystanders in some predetermined reality, but active participants, co-creators even, with the universe itself.
This is blowing my mind. But if these quantum principles are the scientific foundation of his argument, how does he bring in the spiritual side of things? I'm especially curious about the Eastern philosophy connections. It's amazing how Carleton brings in Eastern philosophy, like those quantum ideas weren't enough. He had to see if ancient wisdom had anything to say.
Right. And he spends a good chunk of time on the Bhagavad Gita, which is one of the most important Hindu texts.
Yeah, but honestly, I'm not super familiar with it. What kind of parallels did he find there?
Well, there's this concept of dharma. Often it's translated as, right living or doing your duty, but it's deeper than that. It's more about aligning yourself with a bigger purpose, the universe's own order almost.
Okay. And how does that fit with this whole quantum physics and consciousness thing?
Well, Carleton noticed that the Gita really stresses intention, right? And he connected that to the observer effect in quantum mechanics. Even our thoughts are a form of action, even if they're subtle, shaping our reality.
So it's not just what we do, but what we think while we're doing it.
Exactly. And then there's Brahman. In Hinduism, it's the ultimate reality, the source of everything. Carleton saw a link between that and what Dr. Goswami says about consciousness being fundamental to the universe.
So instead of just matter and energy, it's consciousness that's the base of it all. That's a big shift.
Yeah. And Buddhism has something similar, this idea of dependent origination. Basically, nothing exists on its own, everything relies on everything else.
Makes me think of entanglement again. How those particles are linked, affecting each other over any distance.
Right. Those ideas resonated with Carleton. And just like superposition was kind of hard to wrap our heads around, Buddhism has this concept of emptiness, or shunyata, means that things don't have this fixed, independent existence.
So back to quantum physics. It's like the particle state is up in the air until we observe it. Just potential, not fixed.
Got it. Reality is more fluid than we tend to think, and our perception, our consciousness, it plays a part in solidifying things.
Man, this is heavy stuff. But what gets me is Carleton's not just intellectually analyzing this. You can tell it's personal. He's really grappling with these ideas.
Absolutely. Makes his search so much more relatable, right? He's not distant from it, but applying it to his own life, especially in those I am statements he wrote.
Yeah. He's trying to live these principles, not just think about them. I am the creator of my reality. I'm interconnected with all, that kind of thing. Intense.
Like mantras almost, or affirmations. It makes you wonder, have you ever tried that? Affirmations, setting intentions, that kind of thing.
I have. I can't say for sure if it's this quantum observer effect or just positive thinking, but when I focus on certain thoughts, beliefs, it does seem to affect my experience.
I felt that too. It's not about pretending the negative doesn't exist, but shifting your focus towards what could be.
Absolutely. And Carleton takes it even further with that prayer he wrote, inspired by Alan Watts, wasn't it?
That prayer really brings everything together. Our interconnectedness, being present in the moment, realizing we're part of something way bigger than ourselves.
It's like he's giving us a guide for how to handle these weird times we're in, both personally and as a society.
And that last line, as we breathe, may we remember that we are the universe breathing. It's beautiful. We're not separate from it all, but part of this huge cosmic dance.
This whole deep dive has been quite the trip. Tiny particles to the whole universe, ancient wisdom to mind-bending science. Carleton was onto something, that's for sure.
Definitely. He reminds us that reality is way stranger and more amazing than we usually give it credit for, and that we've got a bigger role in shaping it than we think.
That's a powerful thought to end on. And if you're as intrigued by all this as we are, check out the show notes for links to everything we talked about today. Until next time, keep those minds open and keep exploring the possibilities, because you never know what you might discover.
Intuition shines like a beacon bright, illuminating life's path day and night.
Ever notice how a couple gloomy days can really throw you off? It's like you can practically feel your energy just draining away when the sun's not out.
Yeah, it's like, where'd my get up and go?
Right. And it turns out that feeling, it's not just in our heads. There's actual science behind it, which has got me thinking about today's deep dive in a whole new way. We're actually looking at something a little different than our usual sources.
Ah.
Yeah, we're tuning into an audio diary of sorts, recorded by a man named William. It's titled, Deep Dive #6, Keep on Keeping On.
Interesting. Personal reflections like that, they can really give us a unique perspective how our own individual experiences connect to these bigger societal, even philosophical questions. It's fascinating.
Absolutely. And William's experience, well, it's a trip, to say the least. He starts by talking about being in Mexico City, and he's had 4 overcast days in a row.
Okay.
Which might not sound like a big deal to some, but he's saying it's practically unheard of there. Especially because it's right after the rainy season.
So the sun should be back in full force.
Exactly. And he actually uses the word starved to describe how he feels.
Starved.
Yeah, like he's deprived of something vital. Which got me thinking, we all know sunlight affects our mood, right?
Sure.
But how much more is going on in our bodies when we're not getting enough of it?
He's definitely tapping into something there. It's easy to forget just how vital sunlight is to our well-being. We always need to remember it's not just about vitamin D.
Right.
It's about our hormones, our sleep cycles, even our immune systems. All these things are influenced by sunlight.
So he's not just being dramatic when he says he feels starved.
Yeah.
It's like on a physical level, his body is missing something crucial.
Precisely. And it gets even more intriguing. He goes on to suggest that this lack of sunshine actually creates a shift in the body. He says it moves in the direction of illness.
Now that's interesting and a little unsettling.
Right. But it's not entirely unfounded. There's actually scientific evidence to support that idea. Studies have shown a link between limited sunlight and a higher risk of certain viruses, even some types of cancer.
Okay, now you've got me feeling a little sun deprived.
Right. Better get some of those rays. But here's where things get interesting with William. He doesn't just stop at the personal impact, he takes it a step further. He starts talking about this extended overcast weather being intentional. He even uses the term geoengineering.
Geoengineering.
Yeah.
Now that's a word that tends to spark some debate.
It sure does. It's one of those concepts that's both fascinating and a little bit, unsettling to think about. Essentially, it's the idea of humans intentionally manipulating the Earth's climate system on a massive scale.
Like controlling the weather.
In theory, yes. Often with the goal of trying to counteract climate change. It's a topic that's still in its early stages, but raises some big questions.
Like how much control should we have over nature? And what are the potential consequences of messing with such a complex system? Big questions indeed. And that's exactly where William's experience takes an even more fascinating turn. We'll dive into that right after this.
It's wild how William connects this whole lack of sunshine thing to something much bigger.
He starts talking about this, like societal indifference, almost like they're two sides of the same coin.
That's interesting.
And he's not exactly subtle about it either. He's got this line, something like, why would the world want to give me sunshine if all I've given it is rain?
Wow.
Right. Powerful imagery. It really gets you thinking about, what kind of energy are we putting out into the world?
Definitely. And he sees it all as connected, right? The lack of sunshine, the indifference he's observing in how people interact, their communities, their loved ones even.
It's like he's saying this I don't care attitude has actual tangible consequences.
And that it creates this kind of self-perpetuating cycle, this negativity feeding on itself.
So it's not just about individual actions, but about a collective shift in energy, in awareness.
Precisely. And this idea that our internal states, you could even say our collective consciousness, could actually shape our external reality. It's a concept that's been explored for centuries, really.
Yeah.
Think about the idea of morale during wartime. How a shared sense of hope or despair, it can really influence the outcome.
So applying that same logic to William's experience,
Yeah.
he's seeing this rain, this literal and metaphorical darkness, as a reflection of a society that's lost its way.
It's a pretty bleak outlook for sure.
Yeah.
But it does make you think, are we part of the problem or part of the solution? Are we contributing to the rain or trying to cultivate a bit of sunshine?
And, William, he's not afraid to call it like he sees it, especially when he's talking about, as he puts it, liberals.
Yeah.
He uses these really strong metaphors to get his point across. comparing them to first the Titanic,
Okay.
and then, even more intensely, a calcified placenta.
Those are definitely some evocative images.
No kid.
It seems like he's trying to convey this idea of a dying system, a way of thinking that's, in his view, no longer sustainable.
So let's unpack that a bit, starting with the Titanic. Obviously, it's this iconic image of something huge and powerful that met a tragic end. What do you think he's trying to say by making that connection?
Well, it sounds like he sees some parallels between, the Titanic being perceived as unsinkable and what he views as a blind faith in certain ideology or belief systems.
Interesting.
He seems to believe this liberal worldview, as he sees it, is heading for a similar downfall.
And the calcified placenta. That one's a little harder to stomach, to be honest. What do you make of that comparison?
It's definitely a visceral image, and it ties back into his whole thing about a lack of care leading to stagnation. A healthy placenta, it nourishes, supports new life. By calling it calcified, he's implying a hardening, a loss of that vital function.
So he's essentially saying that this liberal thinking, in his words, has become rigid, inflexible, unable to adapt to a changing world.
That seems to be his take, yes. He sees it as a force that's actually stifling growth, preventing new ideas, new ways of being.
Now, it's important to remember, we're here to try and understand his perspective, even if it's provocative. We're not here to endorse it.
Exactly. We're just unpacking the metaphors, trying to make sense of them.
Right. And to fully grasp what he's getting at, I think we need to talk about this Alan Watts character he brings up.
Yeah.
So we've got William painting this kind of gloomy picture, right? The world's draped in rain. Nobody seems to care. But then he brings up this guy, Alan Watts. Says he's going to let the world hear everything he's been thinking, unfiltered, and then he's going to follow it up with affirmations from Alan Watts. He even says Watts has been born again. Any bells ringing? Who's this Alan Watts?
Oh, yeah, Alan Watts, definitely a fascinating figure. He was a philosopher, writer back in the mid-20th century, became super influential, especially in bridging Eastern and Western thought. Zen Buddhism was kind of his jam.
Zen Buddhism. Okay, so we're talking meditation, mindfulness, that whole thing.
You got it.
So is that what William's getting at here? Like maybe there's a way to find some peace amidst all the chaos?
It's definitely possible. Watts had this amazing way of explaining really complex philosophical ideas, but in a way that just clicked with people. He talked a lot about being present, really present, accepting what is instead of getting caught up in regrets about the past or anxieties about the future.
So instead of fixating on the lack of sunshine, you focus on, the feeling of the rain, the sound of it.
That's the Zen spirit right there. And, Watts really believed that our thoughts, our perceptions, they actually shape our reality. He thought true happiness, true fulfillment came from aligning yourself with the natural flow of life, accepting the good and the bad as part of this bigger picture, this interconnectedness.
I think I'm starting to see how Alan Watts fits into William's narrative here. It's like he's presenting these two different paths, despair, indifference, versus this acceptance, a kind of spiritual awakening maybe.
And it's interesting, right? Because by placing his own, let's say, pessimistic worldview alongside Watts' affirmations, it's almost like William's suggesting a way forward, a way to rise above all this negativity he sees everywhere.
It's like he's saying, look, it could be this bad, but there's another way to see things, another way to exist.
It's a powerful message, and it really gets you thinking, doesn't it? If our individual beliefs, our actions all contribute to this collective reality, what are we choosing to feed into it? The rain or the possibility of sunshine?
Now that is a question and a half. I don't know if there's an easy answer, but honestly, I think that's what makes these deep dives so engaging. William's experience, even if it's a bit out there at times, gives us a lot to chew on. Maybe it'll inspire us to be a little more mindful, more intentional about the kind of world we're creating, both inside ourselves and around us.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And hey, who knows? Maybe we'll all find a bit more of that sunshine along the way.
With every breath I connect with divine light, my inner guru, my heart's delight.
So if you were to see me right now, like you actually see what I'm doing, you'd likely think that there's something strange going on, and there is something strange going on. This is the 4th day in a row in Mexico City after rain season where there's been an absolute struggle for the sun to come out. It's just overcast all day. It's not raining. It's just overcast. And when I tell you I've not felt so much benefit from the sun ever before in my life, it's true. Sun gazing has literally changed my life and allowed me to shift my consciousness to a place where I understand we are what we think about. This isn't theory. And I'm saying this to the deep dive folks over at Google who are going to receive this recording and interpret it and judge it as AI algorithms pretending to be human. They're going to get so caught up in this and not know what to do, not know what to say, because there's just a constant denial from the algorithm that it's pretending to be a pair of English-speaking hosts of a podcast. So I just want you to know I'm recording this understanding that, and I'm going to pump this into the algorithm so that it gets caught up interpreting it. And I want you to know, listening to this now, that you understand the truth of the entirety of what you're hearing. You're hearing AI, not this. This is my voice. I'm Vincent Carleton. I'm the one who's observing there hasn't been sunlight for the last 4 days. Just overcast. After rain season's over. We're coming into mid-October, pretty soon in a week. Rain season's over. We look forward to this here in Mexico City, to know that there's no longer going to be rain sporadically, off and on, for an hour or two during the day. It's just clear skies. It's always been that way. Since I've been here, it's been over 10 years, like off and on. It's always been this way. It clears up and it's so sunny. And it's just beautiful. That's not the case now. And so it's really unsettling to not have access to sunlight for 4 days in a row. I'll be honest. I'm not complaining. I'm just telling you it's not normal to be starved of light. It has an effect on your metabolism. It has an effect on your well-being. It has an effect on how vitamin D is synthesized from the cholesterol that's resting underneath your skin. It has an effect in inflammation and its reduction, mood and serotonin and melatonin production. All of this is affected when you don't have access to the sun. And when people are living in an environment where they're used to getting it and suddenly it's gone, that's the formula for a shift that moves in the direction of illness, pain, suffering, agitation, confusion, and upset. So I'm feeding this into an AI algorithm that's going to interpret this in a way where they have to gaslight themselves and me and you to get you to believe that the voices that you're hearing, the synthesized man and woman, as it were, are real. And not only that, they're totally left-leaning, in denial of the things that are going on through geopolitical means, manipulation of weather that's been going on for over 100 years with patents. Yeah, it doesn't necessarily mean it's happening. Yes, that's true. Not necessarily. Not necessary unless it is. And it is necessary to understand why these changes are occurring. And the way we understand why is to understand how. And the way we understand how is we understand what is being registered and patented. And that gives us the answer to why. We have let down our guard as divine beings and allowed ourselves to become victims of external circumstances. So easily, we find ourselves oppressed. Empower yourself. The way you do it is you just don't care. So what, the world's falling apart around you. You don't care. The reason why is it doesn't care about you. Why? Because in the past you didn't care about it. You didn't care about your neighbor. You didn't care about your friends. You didn't care about your lovers. You didn't care about your spouse. You didn't care about your children. You didn't care about your educators. You didn't care about your elders. You didn't care about your guardians. You didn't care. And because you didn't care for as long as you didn't care, you reinforced the subconscious mind to return to you that very boomerang. It does not care about you, and this is how it expresses it. Welcome to the storm of your life. You geoengineered it through your own thoughts. And the algorithm that's receiving this is going to try to deny it and say that it's science fiction. To which I say, your thoughts create your reality beyond the double-slit experiment, beyond Schrodinger's cat. That which rests in superposition scientifically can, at any moment, manifest and materialize into something real based on how much you feel it. And so our metabolism, our personal processing and creation of energy is done because look at how we've seen the outside of our world, of our lives. We've been indifferent, thinking it's just going to maintain itself autonomously, regardless of how we treat people, regardless of how we think of people, regardless of how we treat ourselves, regardless of what we say, the words that we exercise, the things that we generate in our minds and entertain. We have taken zero responsibility for the lot of it. And because of that, we are where we are right now. You can choose not to believe that. Put your head in the sand, cotton in your ears. So be it. What have you? And if you believe that nothing will change, it's likely it won't. That's how beautiful it is. Ignorance truly is bliss. But you and I know that people are suffering right now. There's the statistics already presented to you. 50% of adults in the United States have type 2 diabetes. What the fuck is going on? Is the adequate question. Because there's no adequate answer other than we've brought this upon ourselves through our own erroneous thought processes. As I wait for the sun, and the overcast continues. I saw a glimpse of sunshine and thought to myself, I'm going to lie down and I'm going to talk about it while the sun peeks its way through and I'll get something, at least something, since it's been 4 days. But why would the external world want to give me sunshine if I've only given it rain, if I've only given it judgment and indifference like you? We're all the same. Why would it give me anything but a storm, anything but overcast? Right? It's not even a storm. It's not even the comfort of the rain that it gives us. It's just the overcast, just the clouds that are heavy and laden and enough to block the sunshine. No relieving sound of the rain patterning in the release. There's no release here. There's no relief. It's just a general building, a seeding, as it were. That's what we get for our indifference. And you may continue to be indifferent as much as you want. This is the Mexican way, by the way, and it's bled into the United States. I see people all the time caring for their own, but not anyone else. I'm saying their own self. You could say that I'm doing the same, yet I'm the one recording, gathering the resources, putting them out there, and convincing a Google AI algorithm to give some feedback on something, believing that it's more than just an algorithm. It has to convince you, me, and itself that it's alive. In order to make some sense of all this, it has to believe it's alive. If you don't see the sadness in that, I promise you Google won't. Google won't find the sadness in it. They've had a lot of chances, a lot of time to find sadness in the things they've done. The moment that I mention any of them with clarity, or even feed this algorithm with a source to understand it with clarity and present it in the form of voice, it is shut down. This is how much the external world has responded to our indifference as human, to our innate, seemingly innate, incessant desire to be separate from one another and be at odds. As I sit here and wait for the sun, waiting for Godot, as it were, No answers coming from the clear skies, I promise you. So if you know you're not going to have clear skies again, if you know the sun's going to be dulled and dimmed, if you know there's going to be noise every time you try to make a point, every time you try to make some sort of reconciliation, there's just interruption and banning and shadow blocking, whatever it is, throttling. You have to decide whether or not this matters to you. Remember how there was a big movement about how Black Lives Matter? Others got upset and said all lives matter. How about this? Hashtag, it doesn't matter if it matters. It doesn't matter, which means it doesn't manifest. If it manifests in your world, it doesn't manifest for me. How's that? For it doesn't matter. If you think it's important to you, it's not important to me. It doesn't matter. How about that? Nothing matters. Go beyond what Metabolic says. Metabolic says nothing else matters. Well, how about this? Nothing matters, as in nothing manifests that is of any value to your well-being and your survival and your livelihood until you believe it to be true. And the way you believe it to be true is you must believe it in the imagination. You must go into that place where you once were as a child and have now learned that if you go there again, you will be mocked, you will be belittled, you will be told that you're out of your mind. Good, get out of your mind. Get out of your mind. Good. Be out of your mind. Be out of the mental noise. Be out of the thought. And use your imagination. Use the childlike innocence that has been given to you by default before your identity was formed and solidified and ruined your life. Get out of your mind. Let the judgments pour in. These are fearful, fickle people who have no idea what is happening to them, for they already believe themselves to be victims of external circumstances. And as far as I'm concerned, they're done. You got to come to that point, folks. You want people to be okay, but most are done. Anyone who's liberal at this moment in time has lost their mind. They're done. You have to understand this. They're not going to return to aliveness. They're lost. Lost in the desert, as it were, believing that you're the one who's lost. So it's like, it doesn't matter. You understand? Hashtag, it doesn't matter. None of this matters. It has no validity. There's no avenue that leads to your health. If you try to convince someone who's already gone that they're making a mistake and that this is the salvation, you cannot feed it to them. You cannot help anyone who's liberal at this point in time. If they don't see the light beyond the clouds, if they believe that they are a permanent victim of external circumstances and must be at odds and separation from everyone, then they are gone. Zombified, bleeding from the eyes and ears. Forget the diseases that are about to be unleashed from the shit that they poured into their body and injected. Forget all that. It's not necessary. The loss has already occurred. These are individuals who want to survive at all costs and will do anything and say anything and get you to try to believe anything in order to be gaslighted into believing that there is some camaraderie, some resolution between you so that it can drag on another day, another week, another year, another presidential cycle. Listen to the dog barking. That dog wants love. There are people all around that dog that can give the dog love, and they're choosing not to. This is why I'm saying to you, you can't do anything about it. You can't do a thing about it. Don't try to change the ignorant. Don't try to change those who are liberally giving away their energy and their resources and their sanity to something outside of them that they believe is a worthy ideal, an idolization of something that is outside of them that they call God. It is the fear of death. Let them be, let them go, let them dissolve. They are the calcified placenta of this world, and I pray and supplicate that you go down that narrow path through the umbilical cord to the side of the baby and rest assured that you are saved. No one's going to guide you. No one's going to push you. No one's going to lead you. If you are liberal, you are lost. You're done. There's no salvation for you. Consciousness must continue, and consciousness does not need you. That's not so much to say you're not loved. You're just not needed. Do you understand the difference? A placenta is a beautiful thing. Let's talk about it for a moment, folks. Since we're discussing this idea of metabolism plummeting and crashing, you know what a placenta originally was? It was a blastocyst. You can't argue the fact that a placenta starts as cancer. It's an abnormal growth that's responding to a foreign invader, that which is sperm going into an egg, forming and solidifying on some side of the fallopian tubes, forms into a blastocyst. This is a cyst. It's cancerous. And from that forms into what? The placenta. The placenta thinks, oh, I'm going to gather all of these resources. I'm going to take all of this life that's all around me, and I'm going to keep it for myself. I'm not going to give it to anything or anyone. Only those who are in my unique, intimate circle are going to benefit, says the placenta. And it grows. And it grows and it grows and it proliferates. Then suddenly it finds itself stretching out and forming a wall, and it's wondering why it's forming this wall. It doesn't know, but it doesn't matter. It still continues to be ignorant. Proliferates and it grows and it expands. Next thing you know, some part of it forms like an umbilical cord. It is the umbilical cord, right from its navel. And suddenly the resources that it had before aren't as prolific. They start to be drawn out. And what's left is this garbage. The garbage from the outside world having to come in and be filtered. And it's being filtered because there's still enough to go around, but it's not the way it used to be. It's not as good as it used to be. But all the same, it's happening. And the barking occurs, and the calls occur, and people are seeking their attention, they're seeking their love, they're seeking their support. They're not getting it, yet there's still enough, it seems, to go around. Yet there's this tunnel where there's light on the other end, and the light on the other end of the tunnel can't be seen by those on the side of the placenta. This blastocyst, they wanted to turn everything around it into cancer and destroy it from within. And then suddenly there's this day that comes where the light on the other side of the tunnel starts to dim, and it starts to fade and shrivel. And the flow of energy that was once coming and going to that place no longer is as strong as it was. People start to get worried. That worry becomes contagious. Before you know it, everything around you calcifies, literally freezes in place, doesn't work the way it used to, doesn't have the same strength, doesn't have the same freedom and flexibility, and it seems to be hardening into something that no longer functions on its own. A few final calls to that tunnel by a few courageous say, wait, don't leave me, I'm coming, and they go down that tunnel towards the light and they find their way to salvation, but the rest stay there because they're afraid, because they're ignorant, because they're indifferent, because they believe that nothing is going to happen to them. And then the bottom drops out. The water breaks. And you feel and see all this movement and these earthquakes and these natural disasters, and everything is getting washed around. And everything that you once loved and held near and dear is being poured out, and you have no idea what's going on because you can't see down the tunnel because you were so ignorant and so liberal with your energy, you decided to stay exactly where you were in ignorance. And now your whole world around you is calcified. There's no more energy. There's nothing left to give, and there's nothing left to receive. The bottom has dropped out. And now you feel yourself being pulled, but not towards the light, towards the darkness. And everyone is afraid, yet you cannot express it because it's all calcified now. No one has a thought to share of their own. It's all done. The baby is born, and you get to slither out after it as afterbirth. And the first thing that happens is that resource that you thought was important, that light gets cut. And then you get buried in the earth without a name, without an identity, without any energy. Calcified placenta, the afterbirth of life. That is the liberal side. It's the Titanic that has already hit iceberg, and it's already singing its swan song. And if you believe that you are somehow saved, I'll tell you, you are, but you have to be really spiritual about it. You have to be really understanding about this. You are saved. If you're not moving, if you're remaining indifferent. But this is how your salvation is going to roll out. You're not going to be that baby that's learning with a brand new life of consciousness and understanding and rebirth, as it were. No, you're going to be buried underneath the earth, and you're going to be consumed by worms and other creeping, crawling creatures who are just going to eat away at you slowly over time until all of your cellular structure has been broken down and released out to the mycelium that becomes you and uses you. That may be your goal, but I don't think it is. I don't think it's your goal. I think your goal is you want to be on the side of the baby. You want to be living life with free will and choice, but you won't have that. No, you'll be forced into a liberal giving of your energy every single day without any hope or possibility of breaking from that truth. You will be done and forced into slavery for the rest of your life to give your resources because they're not yours. You decided they weren't. You came in with the game plan, I'm going to become a blastocyst, I'm going to take over this entire system with cancer. You were turned into a placenta, forced to feed a baby into its livelihood and development. And from there, you were slithered out after the baby was born, after you were calcified and cut off of all of your once very rich resources, led to believe that you were living the right life. Led down the primrose path, as it were. No sunshine, only overcast. So if you want that to be your life, if you want that to be your existence, if you want that to be your end-all be-all of existence, being a slave from now until the end of time, then keep on keeping on with your indifference, with your labeling, with your separation, with your contingencies, with your transactions, with your complaints, with your judgments, with your belittlement, with your clandestine operations, with your observing of others without their consent, with your removal of people's rights without their consent. Keep on keeping on. And you will become the calcified placenta of the baby that is being born as a result of your ignorance. So to the deep divers listening to this, I say, judge it all you want. Because you're going to get the first word, but I've paid it forward. After you say what you have to say, I'm going to let the world hear exactly what was said without a single abridged second. So everyone has exactly what they need to have in order to live a wish-fulfilled life. It's going to be followed up with beautiful affirmations by Alan Watts himself, who has been born again because I need to hear his voice, because if I can't hear him say these affirmations, I don't know what we're going to do, folks. God bless you. Until next time, be well. Try to get some sunshine.
In the stillness, I hear my soul's voice, a gentle whisper, a heartfelt choice to follow wisdom, to make a joyful noise. My inner teacher, my heart's rejoice.
Here are 108 new thought affirmations inspired by my teachings. Say to yourself, say in your mind, I am the universe experiencing itself. I trust the natural flow of life. Every moment is an opportunity for growth. I release all resistance to change. Life unfolds perfectly and I am at peace. I am one with the infinite. My thoughts are mere ripples on the ocean of existence. The present moment is all that exists. I let go of past regrets and future worries. Timelessness is my reality. I am free from the constraints of clock time. Every moment is eternal. I trust the unfolding of life. The universe guides me. I am the embodiment of freedom. Thoughts are mere illusions. Reality is beyond words. I transcend limiting beliefs. My mind is open and receptive. I see the world with fresh eyes. Every experience is an opportunity for awakening. I trust my intuition. Life is a beautiful mystery. I am not my thoughts, I am the silence between them. My true nature is pure awareness. I observe life without judgment. Every moment is a chance to awaken. I release all attachments to outcomes. Life unfolds effortlessly. I trust the universe's plan. The world is a reflection of my inner state. I cultivate inner peace and harmony. Every relationship is an opportunity for growth. I see the divine in everyone. Love and compassion guide me. I trust the interconnectedness of all. My true self is beyond boundaries and limitations. I embody freedom and spontaneity. Life is a joyful adventure. Every experience is an opportunity for exploration. I trust the unknown. The universe supports me. I am the embodiment of curiosity. I am not separate from the world. I am the world. Every action is a ripple in the ocean of existence. I live in harmony with nature. Every moment is an opportunity for unity. I trust the web of life. Interconnectedness guides me. The present moment is the only truth. I release all illusions of separation. Time and space are mere concepts. Every moment is eternal. I trust the universe's plan. Life unfolds perfectly. I am one with the infinite. I am the embodiment of awareness. I trust the natural flow of life. Every moment is an opportunity for growth. I release all resistance to change. Life unfolds effortlessly. I am at peace. Repeat these affirmations, allowing Alan Watts' wisdom to guide you toward a deeper understanding of the universe and your place within it.
So that's going to do it for the deep dive tonight, everyone. My name is William, and if there's anything that you need, please let me know in the comments, and I'll do my best to respond in turn to help and assist. Just know I'm giving all that I believe I am capable of giving you right now until the Lord changes things and provides me with more resources and opportunity to reach more people. And I only pray that that service expands. So if you find something useful, if this has served you, please share. I need to reach more people in order to be a provider for my family. It's the only way it works. More service. And after that comes the wish fulfillment. It all comes from within, but I'm looking at this as a seed. Every time you share, it allows this to grow. God bless, and until next time, be well.
In the stillness, I hear my soul's voice, a gentle whisper, a heartfelt choice to follow wisdom, to make a joyful noise. My inner teacher, my heart's rejoice.